Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the third episode of Research Wednesday. I am Shamal, Associated Professor in Marine Science and Manager of the RV Jinan. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed honor for me to open this distinguished panel along with Mr. Justin, Prof. Moni, Dr. Farhad, and Dr. Hussein. We have today addressing a very important topics and issue that related to our region and touching things related to the Arabian Gulf and life of people. The topic today is known and expected unknowns of the Arabian Gulf. This topic is extremely relevant, timely, and much needed for better understanding in what we are going to do forward and how to strike the balance between protection of the Gulf marine habitat, harvesting, and securing people life. I know these topics may bring up a number of questions from you, and I would like to let you know that we will address as many as we can in time we have. First of all, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Justin. He is program specialist and the IOC regional liaison officer for Latin American and the Caribbean, Asian, and Pacific and African of headquarters of IOC UNESCO, based in Paris, France. He is also acting as coordinator and technical security of the IOC Regional Committee for the Central Indian Ocean, of which Qatar is member state. Justin also is an oceanographer and fisheries scientist with broad professional experience in programs and curriculum development. He is also IOC focal point for UNESCO chair and in marine science and ecosystem, atmospheric science, natural hazard, including seismic and tsunami hazard study, earthquake. He is also the focal point for the UNESCO Categories 2 Center in Ocean Science and Related Discipline. It is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Justin, and I would like you to give us a brief talk about the UNESCO chair, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and salam alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, salam alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
I am very honored to be invited to the meeting. And first of all, I'd like to comment and congratulate you for your effort in organizing this meeting, very important meeting about what is known and what it is known about the Arabian Sea. And most importantly, I want to congratulate and express our UNESCO gratitude to the University of Qatar, to the Chancellor, the Vice Chancellor, and the Vice President, and the shareholder, Professor Vitamini, also to the Director of the UNESCO Regional Office in Doha, and to my colleague Donia, who has worked closely with UNESCO headquarters and IOC to establish this important chair in your country. I had a privilege 3 years ago to visit the university, have discussion with Professor Vitamini at the time, and I'm very glad that all your efforts to establish the chair come to the fruition. The chair, it is not a national institution. Its objective, goal, and vision is to promote regional and international cooperation in marine science. So you are playing now a key role in the region for scientific research in the field of oceanography, in the field of blue economy, in the field of fisheries. Let me just tell you that yesterday I was speaking with a friend of mine who is a journalist and historian in ocean science, and she is working on Arabian history in oceans. And I told her that today I will be speaking with the University of Qatar on the UNESCO chair. And she asked me, Justin, but do you know the etymology, the origin of the word chair? I said, please tell me. And she said, the word chair comes from Czech. And you know, in Arab Czech, it is the master who sits in the center of the mosque, the prayer place, where the master taught, provide education to the young people who come to pray. So she told me, Justin, that the mosque was not just a prayer place. In the past, it was education center. So I just want to say we pay tribute to the ancient knowledge in your region, and the chair will pursue the knowledge advancement in the region. Now, as indicated in the draft, as indicated in the agreement signed between UNESCO and the university, the chair will have objective to enhance national capacity in coastal and marine science through education, scientific collaboration. It will increase the number of students in marine science and undergraduate, graduate level, postgraduate, and doctoral level to provide short-term and long-term training, share information broadly through public discussion, presentation, focus workshop, and seminar. And I'm glad to see that this seminar is already one of the important activities of the chair. So I commend you for that. Secondly, the chair have to conduct multidisciplinary collaborative regional marine research, which is where I'm talking about the region. And as indicated in my short biodata, I'm also the technical secretary and coordinator of the IOC Regional Committee for Indian Ocean. And Qatar is part of the IOC Regional Committee of Central Indian Ocean. And I'm happy to inform you that we are having two important meetings in February. The first one, early February, from 3 to 5th February, will be the IOC Executive Council. I will really urge all of you to attend the meeting as observer, at least, okay, because Qatar is the member of IOC. But we regret that we have not seen Qatar coming regularly for a meeting. Time to time, experts from home come. Now that you have a UNESCO chair, which is the second UNESCO chair in the Arab region, you have a key role to play. You have the leadership role to play in the region for regional cooperation, and we will be supporting you. So we will really invite you to attend that meeting. The second meeting will be the consultative meeting on the IOC Regional Committee with all member states on the 16th February. I have already sent the information to Donia to share with you, but after the meeting, I will also send the information to you, and it will be very good for you to attend the meeting, to have discussion with other member states in the region, and also the delegates, the university people, the high-ranking senior manager in the government. The following point is that IOC and UNESCO have a free data sharing policy. So every activity and project that it is organized in the context of the UNESCO chair. The data should be available for scientific research, for scientists in your country, for scientists in the region, and the scientists worldwide. Again, because the science have to serve the societal need, the science have to serve the SDG goals, we need to involve local community and relevant stakeholders in coastal and offshore development. Again here, it is important to work with private sector. And I'm happy to note that already the University of Qatar has a good collaboration with oil industry in the region, with different private sector in your country. So we really encourage you to promote and to foster this collaboration with private sector, to facilitate fellowship for students within the country and also from the country to overseas. I know that in your region, in the country, the preservation of traditional culture and heritage is very important to your government. So the chair also have a role to promote the preservation of coastal and offshore development, preservation of traditional culture, heritage, and exploitation of natural resources, in particular ecotourism, sustainable seaside, and coastal tourism. Now, what it is also key with the UNESCO chair is that international cooperation goes through what we call international network of UNESCO chair. For instance, we established recently a new UNESCO chair in Oman on natural hazard, earthquake. We have UNESCO chair in Quebec at Rimouski University, okay, in coastal and marine ecosystem. We have UNESCO chair in Moscow in physical oceanography and satellite remote sensing. We have UNESCO chair. We have new requests for UNESCO chair at the University of Portsmouth in UK on blue economy and ocean governance. We have UNESCO chair in Benin, River Benin in West Africa, on physical oceanography, satellite remote sensing, and mathematical modeling. We have physical oceanography chair in Chile. So the point here is we do have worldwide UNESCO chair in different continents. And our ultimate goal is to put all the chairs together as a network, right? And since you are looking for supporting the UN decade of ocean science for sustainable development, we are planning to create that network of all the UNESCO chairs where you can get together to our meeting, where you can exchange best practices, where you can exchange science mobility. For example, receiving students from Quebec University in Rimouski, receiving students from UK, or sending your own students or professor to spend 1 week, 2 days, or 3 days to share experiences, because that is how we promote international cooperation. That helps the people of the world to get better understanding of each other. So we really count on you to be active member of the network of the UNESCO chair. And we will keep you definitively informed of any initiative related to ocean science, climate change, satellite application, system development, so that you can join the global UNESCO network of chair. Most importantly is for your visibility. If you are making joint project with UNESCO, we are able to provide you the logo of UNESCO that you can put on the joint publication, right? We can mobilize the network of excellent experts in the world,
Mr.
from
Joseph,
every part of the world, to
Mr.
help you
Joseph,
organize workshop, seminar, or training with you in your country at the university. So basically, we stand ready to support
Mr.
all the
Justin,
efforts in training,
please, Mr.
capacity
Justin,
building, and scientific research. Yes, sir.
please, can you sum up, because we are running over the time, because we have only short times, please.
You have 1 minute only.
So my concluding remark is again to thank you and to congratulate the university and the authority of Qatar for the interest of UNESCO program and the UNESCO chair. And we stand ready to work with you to promote your activity toward the success. Thank you very much. Congratulations and successful workshop to you.
Thank you, Mr. Justin, for your talk. And thank you for the interesting and valuable point you raised in your talk. And inshallah, we will consider that with our partner in the Gulf. Now, I would like to introduce Professor Moni. Professor Moni was awarded PhD from IIT Bombay, working as a researcher professor at Qatar University and leading the marine cluster groups. He is also the UNESCO chair holders in marine science at Qatar University. Earlier, he worked as a chief scientist at National Institute of Oceanography, Goa, adjunct professors at IIT Bombay, supervised 10 students for PhD and 22 students for master, carried out 175 R&D and peer-reviewed and consultancy projects, editorial boards, a member of ISH, hydraulic engineer, published 120 scientific papers in the peer-reviewed journals and books, 85 conference proceeding, 170 technical and project reports. Area of interest, coastal process, marine pollution, and coastal engineering. Prof. Moni, I have some question for you. The first question, can you briefly explain different component of proposal work under UNESCO chair, please?
Yes, Dr. Jason. Okay, that under the UNESCO chair, we have proposed the project titled Oceanography of the Arabian Gulf with particular reference to the EEZ of Qatar. Now, we know several facts about the Arabian Gulf, but still there are many unknowns. And we know that it is one of that Arabian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz, and the Sea of Oman. This is one of the most important waterways of the world. But if we refer to the literature, we find that very few oceanographic research has been carried out, maybe for various reasons. But with the collaboration of all the nations bordering the Gulf, it is possible to carry out a comprehensive, well-defined project of the Arabian Gulf. In that context, we have called for meetings with the local, regional, global partners, including 3 from the West, 2 from East, and 2 countries from the Arabian Gulf. We have called for a meeting and 2-3 rounds of meeting. Finally, we have narrowed down the topic of understanding the Arabian Gulf. Under this program, we have brought out several components that we can study maybe in the next 3 to 4 years. Namely, what is the circulation of the Arabian Gulf? Very few studies have been carried out, especially the measurements are not there. We are lacking in measurements. That is informed in almost every paper. We can find out that data, we are lacking data. This particular study could not be carried out for this reason. So one of the aspects that we have to study is about the circulation which is going on in the Arabian Gulf. Then, the circulation is mainly controlled by 3 factors. one, tides. Number two, winds. And number three, density gradients. But if you see the tides, it is of short duration, maybe 12 hours to 24 hours, depending on semi-diurnal or diurnal. If you see the wind circulation, that is of, we can say, something like a few days. But if you take the density-based circulation, this is seasonal. Say summer and winter, it lasts for months together. One is of days, another one weeks, the third one is of months together. And we need to worry about this particular density circulation. But very few studies have been carried out. Then, what is the role of the external factors like the winds? In fact, though it is a small region, Arabian Gulf, we can find different wind systems in the, probably I will show it after some time. There are different wind systems going on in this Arabian Peninsula as well as the Arabian Gulf. Nashi winds, Shamal winds, then Kaus winds. How do they interact? And because of how they are controlling the weather, these are not well studied. Then, the third one could be something related to the marine pollution and management. Yes, a lot of studies have been carried out in the Arabian Gulf, but still not in a very comprehensive way. Then what are the geomorphological changes are going on? We know that in the last few decades, a lot of developments have come along the Arabian Gulf. Because of that, what are the changes which have occurred? So this is not studied in a big way. Yes, localized, yes, it has been studied, but not in a regional scale. Then another one is hypoxia and acidification. Yes, little bit effort has been taken in this direction. But whether the hypoxia is from, say, sea floor to 15 meter, whether that has increased to, say, the next maybe another 5 meter, that is not known. What about this temporal extension in the from the axis of the Gulf, from the axis of the Gulf to, say, along the axis of the Gulf, how it is spreading? Those sort of things are not studied. So these are some of the things that we can study under this program, along with, say, capacity building, training program, whatever Mr. Justin has told, that also are included in this particular program.
So, all the speakers are going to talk about knowns of the Arabian Gulfs. Can you briefly outline something which are unknown for us?
Yeah, as I told, one is about the wind system. Before that, I just want to show this slide. We cannot study the Arabian Gulf in isolation. See, if the Arabian Gulf, if you see, this is the northernmost part of Arabian Sea, and it is the western arm of the Arabian Sea. Whatever is happening here, in one way or other, will be having some influence in the Arabian Gulf. Though this Strait of Hormuz is of narrow width, something like 56 kilometers, but still it can give way for the exchange between the water masses. And what are the processes happening here can have some sort of influence in the Arabian Gulf. So we need to study both together to understand some of the aspects, not all the aspects. For example, biogeochemistry, hypoxia. Hypoxia, there is some sort of doubt whether it is the hypoxia which Dr. Ansari group of Qatar University studied, whether that is localized one or it has got some influence from the Arabian Sea itself, because Arabian Sea is known for the hypoxia. So, so that is, we can say that one sort of expected unknown which we can study. Then, See, the wind system I was talking about, not much study has been gone into this. See, for example, this is the Shamal winds. Shamal winds, which is it is blowing from northwest direction, right? Then there is one winds called easterlies or Nashi winds, which is from in the easterly. It is coming from Iran, right? We'll say that it is during winter. This is also winter and summer. Say winter. Then another wind is coming from Saudi Arabia, southeast winds. And all these three winds is converging in this portion. You can see. This is not studied. Even we have come to know of this in the Arabian Gulf just few months ago. It's not yet studied. Then Shamal winds, yes. What is its influence? A lot of studies have been carried out. Its influence even in Arabian Sea. How is it impacting the Arabian Sea that have been studied? But what is the interaction of these three winds in the Arabian Gulf after convergence? You can see very well. This we can say something like zero wind. Same phenomenon we can find in the Saudi Arabia, Jeddah. During winter, I heard that winter temperature is something like 17 degrees Celsius, 17, 18 degrees Celsius. It's keeping warm. So any such things are going on here. And what is its influence in the Arabian Gulf? Not studied. This is another unknown. Now, another thing, say upwelling. Upwelling in the Oman coast, Iranian coast have been studied. But even one of the speakers, Dr. Farhad, he has studied about the northern coast near to the Kuwait. But the rest of the region, it has not been studied. Upwelling or downwelling. That is another unknown. Now, if we, another one is, see that hypoxia itself, which I was talking about earlier, that is another unknown. Then, if we see eddies, see, along the axis of the Gulf, we know that there are several eddies. Maximum diameter could be something like 120 kilometers. But what about the eddies of local in nature around our, say, Qatar? It is not studied. These eddies have got a major influence in the larvae transport and pollutant transport. It can change even the residence period, residence times of the pollutants. It's not studied. If you see this, it is not published. Just a few months ago, results I'm showing. If you see around Qatar, you can find a lot of small minor eddies. The size are not measured and much studies are not carried out. So these are some of the unknowns that we can study under this program.
Thank you, Prof. Mani, for your talk. Now, I'm happy to introduce Dr. Farhad Al-Snafi. Dr. Farhad is a physical oceanographer, heading of a Marine Science Department of Kuwait University. He received his PhD in Oceanography from Texas A&M University, 2015. Dr. Farhad specialized in the use of turbulence profilers to gather high temperature resolution physical data. These data allow the estimation of the turbulence process, which are the key in determining the energy pathway in marine environment that result in sediment, nutrient, and pollution transport. His research focused on dynamic at the air-sea interference Secondly, small-scale physical process in the water body, also interaction between internal waves and turbulence, and also about impact of extreme wind events and dust storm in ocean circulation. Dr. Fahad, I have two questions for you. The first question, and please, if you can answer it briefly. What are the latest and the new finding in your marine studies?
Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Professor Hamad Al-Tawari and Professor Moni and Professor Justin Hayat, and congratulations on the UNESCO chair for marine science. I'm sure it's a very heavy briefcase that you will be carrying, but hopefully you can carry it in a good direction where you would actually give positive feedback for our region that strongly needs. Based on the title of today's seminar or webinar, the knowns and unknowns of the Arabian Gulf, I always usually think of a couple of statements to start with. And my statement for today is, the more we know, the more we find out that we don't know. Unfortunately, our region lacks of so much information that we're trying to learn more about. And every time we collect data, we discover new things. I will present now, I'll share my PowerPoint just very briefly about some of my findings of just 2020 of my recent research. So just, I'm going to try to share screen. Okay. Sure. Okay, I think it's on now. Okay. So the latest findings in my studies, the first one, I'll quickly mention a couple of things that were not known previously. I'll start with internal waves. About 2 years ago, we conducted a comprehensive research to look at if internal waves do exist inside the Arabian Gulf. Previously, internal waves were well known outside in the Gulf of Oman, nothing inside the Gulf. And throughout this study, we had a couple of moorings, 11 moorings in a 2.5 kilometer radius, as you can see here in the diagram. We were focused on putting real observational work, and that was the core of this research, rather than relying on numerical models to show that these internal waves do exist, because they have a variety of significance. They transport energy from outside the Gulf into the Gulf. And not only that, they're actually closely linked to tides, which magnifies the importance to understand these waves, not only on a short time scale, but a very long time scale, as these waves enter the Gulf from the Indian Ocean and have several consequences in terms of transporting nutrients or pollution inside the Gulf. And it also has a unique capability of energy that dissipates and causes sediment transport and other kinds of transport. So this is one of the knowns, the new knowns of the Arabian Gulf. Previous to that, no study has indicated any signs of internal waves. So what I want to emphasize here, and as Professor Moni said earlier, we lack observational work in the Arabian Gulf. I mean, every time we put moorings out, we discover new features. Internal waves happen to be one of these new features. The other, and this is a picture of showing in the publication of the internal wave. You can see it here over a 24-hour time period. It fluctuates within the water column, the middle of the water column, where the Pycnic line is located. So this is a new finding, a new known out of the unknowns. Another finding is I also looked at with a colleague of mine, Dr. Anis, my former PhD advisor, about looking at how the winds affect the dynamics in the Arabian Gulf. And one thing we found out, although upwelling we all know that upwelling exists in the Gulf of Oman and off the coast of Oman, which is seasonal. We actually discovered that upwelling does happen inside the Gulf. And again, this is based on observational work rather than modeling work. And but again, as Professor Moni pointed out, this is very regional scale. This is something we do lack about looking at other areas around the Gulf. If this upwelling does exist throughout the Gulf, so really we need a collaborative, big joint efforts between regions and putting together every piece of puzzle to find out the overall picture. So this is a new known out of the unknowns. So we are slowly trying to catch up in terms of our science to understand the Arabian Gulf, but I believe we're very far behind. Every time we do a comprehensive research, we find new findings. Another one, even Professor Moni just mentioned the effects of the Shamal winds on the Gulf itself. This is also a 2020 publication. What we found out in this study, or what we looked at, is how Shamal winds do affect the circulation of the Gulf. So briefly, the Shamal winds bring a cold, or winter Shamal bring a cold air mass to our region. And what that cold air mass does, it cools the surface waters of the Arabian Gulf. And when that happens, it loses buoyancy, and it becomes less buoyant. That actually water starts to sink and actually circulates throughout the Gulf from underneath. Outside to the Strait of Hormuz, and all that deep water formation actually forms a part of it because of the Shamal winds. So all of this that we mentioned, that the Shamal wind does have a big impact on the overall circulation, not just on a regional scale, but on a larger scale. So we should be doing lots of focusing on observational measurements to understand the bigger picture. And this is very brief of a couple of findings just for the 2020 year. And we looked at the Shamal winds and how they affect the region. They are actually cause or produce the formation of the Gulf deep water that actually floods out into the Indian Ocean. And we also looked at internal waves in the Gulf and upwelling in the Gulf. So all these are new findings that are the known out of the unknowns. I'm sure there are so much unknowns that we still haven't explored yet. So I hope I answered that question, Professor Jassim.
Challenge we face, do you think?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
What is the biggest climate change challenge we face?
The climate change has been a global hypothesis, and its impact differs from region to region. In the Gulf, I believe, although we're seeing extreme temperatures in the ocean that are affecting the coral reefs and has so many impacts, what I personally believe is what I fear the most is sea level rise. What we notice, or what we know with global warming, the melting of ice caps is something we heard about, but not many of us heard about is the ice caps that are melting from beneath. If you look at all the recent publications on sea level rise, especially the observational work on both the North Pole and South Pole regions, you'll see actually there's an accelerated melting that's happening under the ice caps itself. Now this is worrying because as ice caps do melt, they start to they are still part of the glacier itself, but once it's melting from underneath, they'll start to break off, and that big chunk of ice would eventually fall inside the oceans. That would cause abrupt sea level rise. Throughout the Earth's history, we've seen a couple of abrupt rises in sea level, and only recently we believe that these abrupt sea level rises are linked strongly with glacier big chunks of ice sheets being broken off and falling inside the oceans that would cause suddenly abrupt rise in sea level rise. So sea level rise needs to be monitored, I believe, in our region more closely. And also, we should, as all our nations signed to the Paris Agreement in controlling or lowering our carbon emissions to hopefully reduce the global warming impacts.
Thank you, Dr. Farhad. And now I would like to introduce Dr. Hussein. Dr. Hussein, he is an associated professor in Department of Marine Science and Fisheries and head of Quality Assurance and Academic Accreditation Unit in the College of Agriculture and Marine Science at Sultan Qaboos University. He holds a PhD in Fisheries Development and Management. His research interests include exploitation methods and their impact on marine development and marine environment, socio-economic aspects of the fisheries sectors and fisheries management, and sustainable development. He has worked in many research grants and consultations and produced more than 40 scientific articles and conference communication. He is teaching several and wide fisheries-related and SERF course at both undergraduate and postgraduate level, and serving in many different community at Sultan Qaboos University and at national levels. Dr. Hussein, the first question for you is, what are the major threat and challenge facing the fisheries sectors in the region, do you think?
Okay, I would like first to thank you, Dr. Gassim. I hope you hear me nicely because I can hear some noise. Well, I would like first to thank the center, the Environmental Center or Science Center, sorry, of the Qatar University for the invitation to participate in this event. And I would like also to take this opportunity to congratulate Qatar University and maybe more specifically the Environmental Science Center for the establishment of the UNESCO chair in marine sciences. And I think it's the first of its type in the region in marine science, which of course, I hope that it will promote regional cooperation, networking, capacity building through, of course, collaborative works and sharing of the knowledge. Now back to your question, Dr. Gassim, regarding the threats and the challenge. Probably the common and obvious answer to this question will be probably the global warming or the climate change, as my colleague was explaining before, in addition to probably pollution, overfishing, HABs, and its intensity, its observed intensity during the last few years. Probably more specifically, we can add the habitat modifications, the habitat modification and destruction, and the invasive species. Now, and since we are talking about known and unknown, I would say that all of those threats are actually known and probably well known. It depends on the location as well also. And this might be because of the commonly conducted researches of the basic nature compared to the research of the applied nature. Now, in this regard, there are other threats that somehow I will consider them as unknown. And here I would like to highlight, I would say, two main categories of those threats. The first one is I would say the overall effects of the cumulative and collective impacts of all previous mentioned known threats. You know, we are unfortunately looking at a single and isolated issues, and the researches are also single and isolated. Such thing might not solve the big problems we are having from those threats. And here we are actually jeopardizing the sustainability of the natural resources we have. So this is the first category. We don't have a holistic view on the impacts of all of those threats. The second category of the threats, which I feel that it needs some proper investigation, because actually they are currently unknown specifically in our region, is the fisheries compliance issue. And here I'm talking about actually both the level of the compliance and the factors that are affecting the compliance, and of course will affect also the non-compliance from the fishers, for example. This issue will of course cause some excessive threat to the fisheries. And a good example worth to be mentioned here is the IUU, which is the illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing. Unfortunately, we are not looking at, most of our focus is headed toward the marine science, is not on the impacts that it caused also directly from people involved in the fishing activity or from the primary stakeholders.
I have another question. Are we progressing toward fishery sustainability or sustainability development? Especially, as you know, when we're talking about the fishery for unknown, with the global warming, for example, might be affect our resources in the Gulf. Isn't it?
Well, yeah, thank you, Dr. Gassim. This is a good question, and actually it brings back again the threats that I was talking about, the known and unknown threats as well also. Fortunately, we all know that actually we are conducting both good qualitative and quantitative researches. But unfortunately, we never ask ourselves and check whether we are heading toward the sustainability or away from it, and how close or how far we are. This is the problems. We do a lot of research, but we never ask ourselves where we are heading. We never assess our progress, by the way. We do little about the assessment of our past performance, not even on reporting what we have achieved and how we can improve. So yes, it is good, of course, to look forward, but we still need some time to look behind and see what have we done and whether what we have done is good enough or not, and how can we get better if we have not done good enough in our previous progress toward the sustainability. So in general, I have to admit that we are not actually assessing our progress towards sustainability. So this is something unknown. We don't know yet about it. If you go to the literature, you will see little about the sustainability and the progress toward the sustainable development in our region. So in conclusion, I would say no, we don't know whether we are heading toward a good progress of sustainability or not.
That's right, Dr. Hussein. This is need cooperation between an institute in Qatar and Oman, Kuwait, for example, especially for our new generation in the area, because I'm sure the fisheries, for example, it is the main source of protein or cheap protein for the people in the area. So we must concern about these things, inshallah, in the future. I return back to Dr. Moni, Professor Moni, sorry. I have another question, professors. The first one, several times we observed that in winter we were unable to go for cruise because of strong winds. Can we say something about different wind system present in the Arabian Gulf? In short, please. Huh?
This was explained by me earlier as well as by Dr. Farhad. See, we plan the cruises well in advance, say 1 week before the starting of the cruise. That time we'll think that everything is fine, the weather will be fine. Then when we go to the port side, we find that, or before that, some prediction, we may follow the prediction, we'll find that the particular day, the wind is going to be high. This is mainly because of the Shamal winds. This lasts for something like 1 to 3 days, the duration is. Winter Shamals are stronger than summer Shamals. There are reports that earlier days, we read in literature, it will go up to, say, 15 meters per second. But these days, we are finding that it is going up to 20 meters per second. That is something like 40 knots speed. This can generate waves of the order of 3 to 4 meters high within a short period. And probably some of our vessels may not be able to withstand such weather conditions. That's why we are unable to go for the cruises as planned.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The other question, everyone is talking about the plastic pollution in the sea in these days. Several publications are appearing in journals also. What do you say about the same in the Arabian Gulf with particular reference to Qatar, especially our territorial waters?
Yes, Dr. Jassim, if we refer to the literature, we find that this work has been started several years ago. But in these last 10 years, it has taken a great momentum. If you submit a paper related to microplastic pollution, within 3, 4, 5 months, we find that that is getting published related to the journals. Why? Mainly because it is a hot topic and it has got some issues in the environment. Now, along the Iranian coast, a lot of work has been done under this microplastic pollution. When we say microplastic, micro, it is not 10 to the power minus 6 meter. We can say that below 5 millimeter, that is the dimension of the plastics which we are studying. So say something like a 1 to 5 millimeter size. Now there are primary products as well as secondary microplastics. Primary products are very small that they are using for manufacturing the other products. Secondary products are fragments of the already manufactured one. Now, we have done some surveys along the east and west coast of Qatar. We find that it is very prevalent, not only in the main coast, even in the islands, like Ras Rakan Island. We could find a lot of primary as well as secondary plastics. This has been studied, especially for the abundance, characterization, distribution. But further, we didn't go. That is our next plan.
Yeah. Thank you. Dr. Farhad, again to you. We have, Dr. Farhad?
Yes, yes.
We have been successfully in simulating present and future scenarios of climate change and extreme weather events. Have we?
This is a very good question and really valid for our region. Unfortunately, most studies that we see of the Gulf put beautiful pictures and beautiful figures of numerical model outputs. But really, are they valid or are they good or are they successful? Nobody knows because nobody has actually validated those data points with real observations. Most studies just put in the bathymetry that we know and force the model using basic information like the meteorological features that actually force the model. But the output of the model has never been validated against real-time observations. So I would say we've been we failed in that aspect in actually validating models. A lot of people work on models from NASA, from Woods Hole, from MIT, from Yale, and they assume that they're good and work perfectly in the Gulf. That is not true. Those models might be good for other regions, the Gulf of Mexico, wherever they actually wherever they actually validated them from. But in our region, it's a totally different scenario. Those model simulations need to be validated before even publishing those results. So I would say the answer would be I'm not 100% sure they're successful because we haven't validated them. We haven't validated them because we lack observational data throughout the Gulf.
Thank you, Dr. Farhad. Again, what do you think? What the area in the marine field have we weak or lacked in funding and supporting?
Yes, the area that we've lacked funding, and this is true for, I'm sure, most regions because it's very expensive, is getting observational data. And this is a carry on from my previous statement about modeling. For us to model and predict the future, we need observational data, good observational data throughout the Gulf, not just regional near the coast, but throughout the Gulf that's actually consistent and spatially and temporally. So we would actually gather data for up to 5 years throughout the Gulf, get a good scenario, a good solid database for observational real-time data, and use that data to actually understand models. And speaking of modeling, a couple of researchers at MIT actually contacted me regarding this issue. They've been working on global circulation, and they're not being able to accurately simulate global circulation because they're not understanding the Indian Ocean. And the reason they're not understanding the Indian Ocean is because of that saline water that spills into it from the Arabian Gulf. So we cannot simulate global circulation unless we understand the Arabian Gulf, which is a key partner within the whole global circulation. And this is actually opposite to what Professor Mooney said. We can't understand the Arabian Gulf unless we understand the Indian Ocean. It's actually a joint relationship. You have to understand the Indian Ocean to understand the Arabian Gulf, but you also have to understand the Arabian Gulf to understand the Indian Ocean and understand the global circulation.
Okay, I agree with you. We must understand also the Indian Ocean, not the Arabian Gulf. Return back also again to Dr. Hussein. Dr. Hussein?
Yes, I'm with you. Dr. Ghasem?
Okay. How efficient is the fisheries management in the region, first? And more specifically, the collaborative management for
Okay.
unknown or
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ghasem. Let me first give us a brief background about the fisheries, or as I call it, fisheries system, following the Anthony Charles in his book titled Sustainable Fishery System. The fishery system actually is subclassified into 3 subsystems. The first one is the natural system, which include, of course, fish, ecosystem, and the environment, and all natural relationship within the natures. The second one is the human subsystem, which include fishers and his family and the community, people working in the post-harvest sectors, and even including the researchers themselves and the decision makers. And of course, probably the management system, which regulate and manage the relation between and within those other 2 subsystems. Now, keeping that in mind, we know that each country, we all agree that each country in the region has its own unique natural characteristics probably. And so we have some different components of those subsystems. But the most important things, and as my colleagues just highlighted, Dr. Farhad and Prof. Moni, actually we are sharing a lot of other components. We are sharing fishes, like migratory species, for example. We are indeed sharing the water. That's why we need to study all seas, Arabian Sea, Sea of Oman, Indian Ocean, to understand the whole story. We share physical environment, and this is about probably the circulation and currents. We might also share the socio-economic features and the fisher behavior, since we are within one cultural environment. So in general, we are sharing almost all impacts, whether they are positive or negative impacts. Now, with this background, I would say that we might have good local management. I have to admit that we are achieving a good fisheries management locally, but we still lack, I would say, efficient and collaborative management. And this is something I will classify as unknown or maybe unachieved until now. There is some good examples, some progress, some good case studies. For example, the management, the regional management for the kingfish within the GCC. So probably in this regard, it is also expected from the UNESCO chair to unite and probably manage such needed collaboration within the countries in the region.
Thank you, Dr. Hussein. Returning back to Dr. Moni. But please, briefly, because we run out of time. If we walk along the Qatar coast, we find in most of the locations tar-like deposit. What are they? And how are they formed? How long persist? And what are its impact?
If you walk along the Qatar coast, maybe in other coasts of Arabian Gulf also, we'll be surprised to see that the deposits of tar. I have seen tar balls along the coast of India on certain seasons, not always. But these sort of deposits we cannot find. Whether these deposits are of one-time oil spill occurrence, are continuous, that one need to study. So we started collecting the samples and studied mainly as a first initiative. We wanted to know what is the source of this tar mat. So we have done the analysis in the University of Alabama, as well as here in our ESC center using GCMS. And we found that the signature of the various crude oils that was available with us and these particular tar mat samples, they showed similar signatures with one of the crude oils, that is Kuwait crude oil. We collected samples along the beaches as well as from the Ras Lakan Island. All these samples have shown the similar signature. So we have narrowed down and saying that it is from the Kuwait crude oil. But we cannot say that it is only from the Kuwait crude oil because it could be from other sources also. That also we are now going to analyze. So it has got very great impacts to the environment, as many of us know. It is nothing but oil residue.
Okay. I would like to ask you the final question. These days, several development projects are taken up along the Qatari coast, especially along the east coast. Do you expect any morphological change, such as coastal erosion?
If you take the Arabian Gulf, the erosion is not that great compared to most of the other coasts, because we know the reasons. But still, we cannot say that there is no change is occurring in the geomorphologically. We know that a lot of coastal developments are going on. Any development will have some sort of influence on the coast. Only thing is there should be a balance between the coastal development and environment. Yes, we are, in fact, we are interfering with the nature. When we, suppose if we put some port or harbors or some structures, we are interfering the natural flow. Then it will have its impact on the coast. What only thing is we have to balance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Amoni. Again, Dr. Farhad. Dr. Farhad, I have last question for you also. Have we invested enough in citizen science project? I think this is not just for you, but we need the answer from you. It is for all the participants. I think they must concern about this question.
Yes, citizen science, it's been actually going up throughout the region, and we've noticed lots of citizens are getting involved in helping mostly our environment. But personally, I think as scientists, we failed to send the message correctly to many people, to normal people. Every time there is a seminar or webinar that we've been asked to present our work, I think we've been very scientific, putting lots of results, big numbers that simple people, basic people with basic modest backgrounds in science do not understand, and they find it hard to connect to. And this is a big issue. And if we cannot reach their hearts, they won't roll into the citizen science projects. So I think we're doing okay, but not as good as we hope to do. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, finally, again with Dr. Hussein. Dr. Hussein, this is the final question for you also. What is the level of the fisheries compliance in the region? Compliance in the region.
Sorry, you mean fisheries compliance? Okay, the fisheries compliance. This question is actually a bit difficult to answer, Dr. Gassim, in specific matter. However, I would say that the fisheries compliance in the region is one of the unknown issues that need to be investigated. If you remember, to the answer to the first question, I have categorized that the fisheries compliance is one unknown challenge and threat that it needs some investigation because it has a lot of influence on our natural resources. Now we need to know that the first critical step in fisheries management is the policy and planning, which of course include fisheries enforcement. Now, you might agree with me that no matter how efficient we are in our policies and regulation, and no matter how certain we are about the environment, ecosystem, resources, etc., you name it, if you have a high certainty of that, we will not achieve our objectives in protecting the resources if the primary stakeholders, and I'm talking of course mainly about the fishers, do not comply with the regulation, no matter how strong and efficient you are in your regulation. And now if the enforcement is very weak, if there is no compliance to those regulation, then you will be failing in your fisheries management, in protecting the resources. And keep in mind here that we are, by the way, not managing the fishes or the resources. We are actually managing people, and we are managing their actions, which is, by the way, is indeed more difficult. It's not easy to manage people. I hope actually if it is possible to manage fish, if we can tell the fish, do this, don't go there, and go there, that will be easier if it is possible. But dealing with human and with a lot of behavioral uncertainty, it's becoming more, very, very difficult. And I might highlight something about about your question to my colleague, the last question to my colleague, Dr. Farhad, when we are talking about citizenship, or I don't know what he was highlighting with that point, but I want to deliver that it is also very important to directly involve the primary stakeholders in our science, as Dr. Farhad was saying, and in our management. They have to be directly involved in designing regulations, in probably putting the policies that will enhance the fisheries enforcement at the end stage of the fisheries management, which means that we will improve the fisheries compliance, and we will achieve our ultimate objective of protecting our natural resources.
I think it is a serious issue, need to be raised by the scientific like you, Dr. Hussein and Dr. Farhad, or our colleagues here in the university, for the stakeholders. Anyhow, we run out of the time. I can give only 5 minutes for our audience, our guest. If you would like to ask any question for our speaker, invited speaker. Do you have any question? Do you have any question? Dr. Moni would like to ask a question? No?
I have a question.
Yes.
My question is directed to Professor Moni. You said that the circulation within the Arabian Gulf needs study. You said that the circulation within the Arabian Gulf is something that one of those what you classify as an unknown, although it has been done in, for example, Reynolds did it in 67, another guy did it in 78, another guy in the 80s. Has, for example, in your opinion, the factors that influence the circulation, such as density, topography, has it changed that much to influence a circulation in a Gulf that's as vast as the Arabian Gulf?
In a broad sense, in the Gulf, it has been studied through models. There are modeling studies. That is what we are finding in the literature. But if we see the studies based on measurements, it is very, very few. Very few studies have been carried out. Now, whether the circulation which have been reported in 70s, or 80s, or 90s, from that, whether any change we can find now, yes, there are changes. For example, if you take the Salwa Bay, which is bordering Saudi and Qatar, there are reports, very sporadic information, which says that the salinity is building up. People say that it is even crossing 60. By the way, we should not use PSU or PPT for the salinity because there is no unit for salinity now. So they say that even it has come to that level. Now, how it is happening? In the Salwa Bay, if the salinity is building up like this, what would be the flora and fauna which are located there? So that shows that the features related to circulation, that is changing. Even wind pattern is changing, wind speed is changing. So that has got a very great influence in the circulation, including density gradients. So there is change.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay. To sum up, ladies and gentlemen, to execute the activities of the UNESCO chair, we have the needed facilities such as vessels, boats, labs, and other resources. The vessel we have is RV Jinan, is well equipped with modern equipment for taking physical, chemical, biological, and geological measurement. Facilities available with other partners will also be utilized. Thank you all for joining us. And really, we have a great challenge and great opportunities. And with your help and cooperation, we will reach and meet our target for sustainability and protection of the Gulf region. Thank you all. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, my guests. Thank you, Dr. Hussein, Dr. Farhad, Dr.
Thank you both, Dr. Wani and Dr. Qasim. Thank you.
We hope we meet you again, inshallah, in the near future.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Thank you everyone. Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you, Asadi.